Welcome to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, your weekly dose of news and advice that comes to your pocket every single Saturday. Holding it down, here we got Mac, Mark, Scott, and Landon. Enjoy today's show.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. However you may be reaching us today, thank you for stopping in. Subscribe and check out our socials at snap_fantasy. So, the reason you came down here today is, of course, to hear who we are talking about, and those are our favorite late round quarterbacks. Now, this is a deep bin if you want to go diving around in it, but we know who the hot commodities are at quarterback, and we're going to be talking about the players that you're ending up with because you didn't go for a Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or even a Dak Prescott. We're going to be talking about the guys that are a little further down the line. And as a little piece today, we're going to be comparing our favorites. I've got my co-host Landon here with me, and he'll be joining us in a minute. But for now, I'll cap things off by revealing who my favorite late round quarterback is, and that is Matt Stafford of the Detroit Lions. Yes, Matt Stafford, on a podcast where the NFC North reigns supreme among guys like Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. I'm going with Stafford, and the reason is, well, there's lots, but after so many years, this guy still has so much left in the tank. He is a tremendous leader, and while his value may be a little bit capped, just given that he is a Detroit Lion, I still think he brings a ton of value, and he sure still does have a heck of an arm. So looking at his last season, he missed half the season with a back injury, but in the time he started, he went 3-4-1 for his team, and then of course the Lions lost every game where he wasn't playing. So we're going to get into the metrics a little more specifically in a minute here, but I want to hear from Lando because I know he's got a take himself.
Marky, that's a great pick for your late round quarterback. He's going in the 10th round. If you don't remember, people, Matt Stafford averaged 21.45 points per game. That is elite. That is better than what Jameis and Pat Mahomes did last year. Unfortunately, he got injured. But I'm going to talk about a deeper diving quarterback. I'm going way back, way down the list. So far down, he might not even get drafted in some of your home leagues. Mm-hmm. So this is why that you could probably take him as your number 2 guy. If you have a deeper bench on your fantasy team, add my guy to the bottom, and I think you'll be happy. And that's going to be Denver quarterback Drew Lock. Ooh. It's a little scary.
Wee.
I get it. And you know what? What's worse, he's got a pretty tough schedule to start. So, hear me out. What Denver did is they surrounded him with an absolute elite receiving core and some running back help. He's got Cortland Sutton, Jerry Judy, one of our favorite guys, Noah Fant, athletic tight end. He's got Melvin Gordon to shore up that backfield so that they don't have to cover Cortland and Judy like crazy. They need to keep guys in the box. Philip Lindsay is still an explosive undrafted running back that he's going to be around to dump off passes. I mean, Melvin Gordon's still a very competent pass catcher. So that I like Drew Lock, and because the top end is the ceiling. He's got no ceiling. He's going to be great. Missouri, he was a pretty good quarterback. He threw over 3,000 yards 3 years in a row. Almost reached 4,000 yards once. He's about a 64% completion percentage, which is pretty good. But one thing I like about him the most is he is a winner. He went 4-1 as a starter, and Denver really wants to get their quarterback. I think by the end of 2020, we will be referring to Drew Lock as Andrew Lock. He's going to upgrade here.
Okay. Those words might be a little bit hasty, Lando, but I don't hate the pick. I do like Drew Lock a lot. He showed some really great mentality on the field, and the team has only grown since then. They are already a defensive powerhouse, but the Broncos having added Jerry Judy, who I really love, and he probably would have been my favorite wide receiver in this year's draft class. But I also really love Noah Fant. But no offense to you, Landon, my guy, Matt Stafford, has a tight end that can make just as big or even bigger of a leap, and that is TJ Hawkinson. So it's kind of interesting we picked these two guys because we're talking about the first and second tight ends off the board in the 2019 draft. And so Hawkinson is totally capable of becoming the hands tight end that this team desperately needs, and Stafford is the guy that can find him for the tight window passes. Throughout his entire career, Matt Stafford has been two things: aggressive and accurate. He has finished as a QB, he's been in the top 10 for fantasy quarterbacking in 6 of his last 10 seasons. So it's always like a solid realm for him. And even last year, he was on pace to put up, 5,000 yards and he finished with 19 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, which is already a great ratio. And to think if he'd had played twice the amount of games, theoretically, he could have doubled his points. But TJ Hawkinson is merely the tip of the iceberg here, because I haven't even mentioned Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Those guys, if you haven't heard, are excellent additions to a fantasy team as well and could make a fine stack if you were to consider taking Matt Stafford. What I really like about Kenny G and Marvin Jones is neither of them are the best at getting separation, but both of them are excellent at making contested catches. Marvin Jones, who is very often slept on in the fantasy discourse, he holds down an 80% contested catch rate. And Kenny Golladay, last year his numbers were lower in comparison, but in 2018 his numbers were 83%. So right there between Golladay, Jones, and Hawkinson, those are just adding to my argument here, Lando. What you got for me?
All right. Drew Lock came in as a rookie in week 13 and won games. He's only 23 years old. He's 6'4", 230 pounds. He is a big boy. This guy's going to run. This guy is going to have a rushing floor that could win you weeks. We know the cheat codes, the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens. This guy, I know he didn't run very much. He had 2 to 5 rushing attempts per game, but he's got wheels. He's got 4, 6 to 9 wheels, and that's 83rd percentile. So I think he can really kind of open things up. The defenses are not going to prepare to get Drew Lock covered. They're not going to spy on him. He is just going to be able to take off and run. That's a little bit of a projection, but he could easily have over 200 rushing yards on the ground this year, and I think that will give you a safe floor. And that's kind of what I'm hoping on for him to be a good or could be great fantasy quarterback.
So are you at all worried about the fact that they're investing more and more into their run game? Because that will certainly take away from the passing that they're building up here. I don't know. It looks like a pretty balanced offense to me, but they did certainly add a large name with Melvin Gordon.
Oh, the coaches aren't going to want him to run. They're not going to have design runs for Mr. Drew Lock, but I think he's going to be able to do it. It's going to be his kind of last resort. It's going to be his chance where he might not be confident starting the full year, kind of getting those passes into tight windows, and that's what he's going to take off. He's going to take advantage of his speed, and that's going to be why he's the difference between a 10th round Matt Stafford and a 14th round Drew Lock. Is he's going to have that upside in the floor and rushing. That's what I'm hoping, Marky. I'm going after, instead of he's not a high percentage or he's not a high volume passer. And that's what people are going to worry about. That's why it's going to be tough to have Cortland and Jerry Judy and Noah Fant and Phillip Lindsay as fantasy viable options. It's a low volume passing play. He's got to be extremely efficient. He's got to get up to that 68% completion percentage. But I do think that he could get on the floor and run, create first downs, and take that really step forward as a future in the NFL. I mean, he's younger than Joe Burrow, and I think he has at least 5 games under his belt playing some pretty good competition with Kansas City and the Detroit Lions, the aforementioned Detroit Lions, where he can come out and win for that organization.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree, and I like to look at Drew Lock with all of the enthusiasm that you have, but there's just such a small sample size. And the NFL, there's some big hitters, and if Drew Lock wants to start making plays on his feet, fine. But I don't know. You can't really assume that's going to become part of his game at the snap of his fingers. The guy probably only had maybe 20 carries in his 5 games. But he was being a little bolder at the end. Granted, he was playing against teams like Detroit and Oakland. So even then, what's going to happen to this kid when he gets hit with a harder schedule, which, may I add, the Denver Broncos really do have.
They do. They really do. But so, are you concerned at all about Matt Stafford and his injury history? Last year was a severe tailbone injury, and I mean that's not great. He had a tailbone fracture, and he's had shoulder injuries, shoulder dislocations. He had a finger dislocation. He's getting beat up, and he's not getting any younger.
No, that's true, but he has such a strong arm.
Yeah.
He's going to be throwing the ball a ton. That's what you take him for. You don't take any player ever because you think they might get injured. You think about the time they spend in the league when they're healthy. And obviously Stafford still has enough to be a really high impact player in a division that's super competitive. So with some more, a big leap from Hawkinson could really make the difference here. And he could have one of his, top 7 or so quarterback finishes for fantasy in 2020.
I'm going to propose something to you, Marky. How about this for draft strategy? You're in the 10th round. You haven't taken a quarterback. Maybe take Matt Stafford. But when you get into that 14th round, I like a shot on Drew Lock as well.
You know what, Lando? I agree with that take.
Sounds
That's why
good,
we're
Marky.
friends. All right. Well, it's been nice debating this with you, Lando, but everything you said was wrong, and I was right. No, just kidding. We do have a lot more to give on late round quarterbacks, and we'll be diving more into that topic in future episodes. But as for now, it's up to you. If you want to be hanging on to that quarterback pick for later in the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, just remember there's always more players to be had than the players that you will see on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That'll be it for this episode of the Snap Fantasy Podcast. Tune in to our weekly segments on YouTube, drop us comments, and hit us up on socials at snap_fantasy. Take care for now.